The myth. We thought. We knew most of us, somewhere in the blurred stretch of childhood, heard the old Greek tale of Daedalus and Icarus. It's an image etched into the collective imagination. The masterful architect Daedalus, unjustly locked away in a remote tower by the tyrant king Minos, with only his young son Icarus for company. Refusing to accept a lifetime in stone and shadow, Daedalus began a daring craft. Wings, fashioned from the feathers of passing birds and bound together with golden beeswax. One summer morning, father and son stood at the edge of the tower's window ledge, the horizon spilling wide before them. Daedalus's voice was steady, but it carried a warning like a taut bowstring. Fly too high, and the sun will melt the wax. Fly too low, and the sea's spray will drag you down. Stay the middle course. They took to the air. The island fell away behind them. But in the giddy rush of freedom, Icarus rose higher and higher, unable or unwilling to temper his exhilaration. The wax loosened, feathers scattered into the wind, and he fell, swallowed by the blue depths near an island that still bears his name. The usual moral, and what it misses. The way the story is usually told, the lesson points sharply in one direction. Restrain yourself. Don't get carried away. Avoid arrogance. Keep your feet, or in this case, your wings, steady. On the surface, this is sound advice. History is littered with wreckages born of unchecked ego and overreach. But the simplicity of that message hides another truth, one that glimmers faintly beneath the waves of the myth. It is also a story about escape, about refusing to remain locked in a place that stifles you, about daring to imagine a different horizon and taking the first unsteady steps toward it. For every reckless soul who burns their wings in a blaze of overconfidence, there are countless others who never leave the tower at all, who live their entire lives inside invisible walls, never testing their own strength, never seeking the edge where freedom might begin. The second, quieter moral. When we strip the story back to its bones, two lessons stand side by side. One is the well-known warning about hubris. The other, quieter but just as vital, is about the cost of inaction, the slow decay of a life lived in captivity. Whether that captivity is enforced by others or by our own fear, we rarely speak about those who stay behind. Not the ones trapped by force, but those imprisoned by hesitation. People who remain in jobs that drain them, in relationships that shrink them, in routines that numb them, simply because risk feels heavier than certainty. The guide. Within the story, if there's a figure worth studying for guidance, it's not Icarus, it's Daedalus. Despite the tragedy that followed, he embodied the balance between caution and courage. He didn't simply list dangers, nor did he romanticize boldness for its own sake. He acknowledged the hazards of both extremes, the wild pull of unbridled ambition, and the quiet poison of stagnation. He showed his son the wings, not as toys, but as tools. He spoke not only of dangers in the sky, but of the dangers in staying grounded forever. He urged him to venture outward, to ride the currents, to aim for new lands, but to do so with eyes open and mind alert. Why this matters beyond the myth. Our culture tends to memorialize the spectacular crash and forget the countless invisible losses that come from never trying. We recall Icarus tumbling into the sea, but overlook the prisoners who never even stepped to the ledge. The truth is, there are two kinds of danger, the kind that comes from flying too close to the sun, and the kind that comes from never leaving the shadows. Successful risk-taking lies somewhere between, on that narrow band of sky where you're neither hugging the waterline nor courting disaster at the zenith. The invisible towers we live in. In our world, the towers aren't built from stone. They're constructed from routines, paychecks, and the approval of others. They are reinforced by the voices, sometimes external, sometimes in our own heads, that say, it's safer to stay here. Don't tempt fate, don't be foolish. And so, we become voluntary prisoners. We cling to the predictability of a job we've long outgrown because the uncertainty of a career shift feels unbearable. We keep quiet in meetings because speaking up might invite criticism. We stay in cities that no longer inspire us because moving feels like severing roots. It's easy to see Icarus's fatal flight as a mistake. It's harder to admit that we, too, risk a quieter tragedy. The erosion of our spirit through years of untested potential. The miscalculation of no risk. Avoiding risk feels rational until you notice what it costs. A life without risk is not a life without danger. It's simply a life with different dangers. The danger of missed opportunities, the danger of regret that festers quietly, surfacing only when it's too late to act. Imagine reaching the end of a decade, looking back, and realizing the only thing you protected was the very cage you wanted to escape. That's the kind of loss no insurance policy covers, the kind no one warns you about. Learning from Daedalus's compass. Successful risk-takers aren't gamblers tossing their lives on the table. They think like Daedalus. They survey the landscape before they leap. They build their wings carefully with tested materials. They study the currents, the distances, the weather. And crucially, they know when to take off. Caution is part of the strategy, but so is commitment. Once the launch begins, hesitation becomes as dangerous as recklessness. The middle path that Daedalus advised wasn't a call for mediocrity, it was a call for mastery. Finding the middle path in real life. In practical terms, the middle path is less about compromise and more about calibration. It's leaving a toxic job only after you've lined up a new opportunity or built savings. Starting a creative project without expecting instant success, but also without hiding it forever in drafts. Investing in something new, not with your entire fortune, but with enough to learn and grow without courting ruin. It's neither the paralysis of someday nor the recklessness of all or nothing. It's a disciplined dance between preparation and action. The role of discomfort. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The right risks will never feel entirely safe. If they do, they're not really risks. They're rehearsals. Growth requires a controlled encounter with uncertainty, much like a pilot learning to navigate turbulence before taking on a transoceanic flight. If you wait for the moment when you feel absolutely ready, you'll be waiting until your wings turn to dust. Readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. When to ignore the crowd. There's a reason innovators, artists, and leaders are often told they're flying too close to the sun. They see possibilities others can't or won't acknowledge. The crowd prefers the safety of the tower, and it resents those who prove the open sky is survivable. If Daedalus had listened to the voices in the tower, he and Icarus would have died there, unknown, without ever touching the wind. Sometimes the crowd isn't malicious. It's simply untrained to imagine anything beyond its walls. But their comfort is not your destiny. What the myth leaves out. The story fades after Icarus falls, but Daedalus survived. He mourned, yes, but he also landed safely on distant shores. He proved that the journey was possible. His tragedy wasn't in taking the risk, it was in losing someone to the extremes of it. From him, we learn the rarest form of wisdom. Take risks large enough to matter, small enough to survive. Then take another, and another. The real, moral. Flying too high may melt your wings. Flying too low may drown your spirit. But refusing to fly at all, that's the surest way to remain a prisoner. Success doesn't come from blind leaps or endless caution. It comes from learning the art of deliberate ascent. Build your wings with care. Choose your moment. And when it comes, step to the ledge. Because in the end, the greatest risk isn't in falling. It's in never feeling the wind on your face.